Welcome back to Cooking with Gerry. I'm going to show you today another way I like to prepare eggs. What I have right now in the frying pan is just enough water to cover the bottom, about 1 tablespoon of virgin olive oil, trying to never cook with an extra virgin oil because it maintains its nutritional value better if it's eaten raw. So I will add always the extra virgin oil at the end when the cooking is finished and the heat has been turned off. Inside the frying pan I have cauliflower and broccoli. It's been cooking for about 4 minutes, so the water is at a boil. I put everything in, the water, oil, and the vegetables, and then I turn the heat on. It's not necessary to heat up the pan and then add the vegetables. I did it all at once, trying to streamline these videos I'm making so that I can do them in one segment, and it allows me to upload them quicker because I still need to get that software to splice the multiple segments together, which are the other videos, most of them so far. So here is, I want to show you the way I cut the broccoli and cauliflower. I left 2 out, so these 2 will obviously be the crunchy ones, but they'll be mixed in. So I take this, the stalk of the broccoli is the most dense, so because I want to put everything in together, I cut the stalk into much smaller pieces. And then with the flour, to maintain the flour and not slice all the way through, I just cut about halfway, and then using my fingers and the knife, I basically rip that piece away so it stays as the flour. And I'll do that for all of them. Here's another piece, cutting the stalk into smaller pieces until I get to a certain point, and then putting the knife in about halfway, using my fingers and the knife to tear apart that piece of the flour, and these are going to go in. So as I said, cauliflower and broccoli. I also wanted to add a small piece of pumpkin. But the cauliflower is turning, it's spoiling. So if I don't eat it now, I won't be able to eat it. It'll go in the compost pit, which I don't want. So I have lots of cauliflower, a little bit of broccoli, and that's going to be ample for one meal. And I'm also going to add spinach right at the end, which I have washed and chopped. This will go at the end because I don't really want to cook the spinach. It'll be about 2 minutes in the frying pan because it's healthier if it's closer to raw than closer to overcooked. So that'll go in right at the end. And the way I'm going to cook the eggs, you'll see it's kind of like a poached egg, which is an egg that you crack into boiling water. And I was lucky this morning, the neighbor who has chickens, she sold me 5 of the chickens' eggs. So I know that they were laid within the past 24 hours because I was at her store yesterday to buy some vegetables, and she said come back tomorrow, which is today, and there will be some fresh eggs. So I have 5 of them. I'm going to use 2 today with this meal and show you how I cook the eggs. Because they are fresh and because they are farm eggs as opposed to factory farm eggs, I think it's okay to eat them raw or mostly raw. This cooking method, if I were to use a farm factory egg, I would want to cook it much more thoroughly. Farm factory chickens don't get to live as a chicken would live if it was out in nature, running around the garden, pecking at the insects at the bottom on the ground. They'll use their feet to dig away the leaves. and then they'll find whatever insects are underneath. And many of these farm factory chickens are not fed what a chicken should be fed to have a fully healthy natural chicken. So the farm factory eggs I would cook much more thoroughly. I'm going to cook this for maybe 2 more minutes, then I'll add the spinach. While this is happening, some information I'd like to share with you. I like to also include in these videos something that can help you live a happier and healthier life. The first item on my list, I have 3 items, is dessert. Many people believe that dessert has to be a part of the meal for the meal to be satisfactory. Now, obviously depends on the dessert, but most desserts have a lot of sugar. And most desserts are made in a factory. If you're lucky enough to have someone in your life that likes to bake, a homemade dessert is much better than a store-bought dessert, because first of all, it's made by someone you know and trust, versus being made in a factory by either someone who's just working there for a paycheck, and many times it's a robot. And if the person, or maybe you yourself like to bake, can control the amount of sugar and ingredients that are put into the homemade dessert, makes a big difference. With a business, they usually have to use the lowest quality products so that their end product that's at the store is as cheap as possible. If you have an apple pie, for example, one is $4 and one is $8. The $8 one is going to be probably more nutritious because better quality ingredients are used. But most people are going to buy the $4 apple pie, which has lower quality ingredients, because it's cheaper. If you have to feed a family of 3 or 5, that $4 is going to go much farther than $8. You could buy 2 apple pies of that $4 at the same price as 1 apple pie. So that's the problem with buying pre-made desserts. It's usually the cheapest ingredients possible. So I'm going to add the spinach. I like my broccoli and cauliflower and most of my veggies to be crunchy, so I'm not cooking them all the way through. Spinach is going in. This will go here. And I'm going to stir it around inside the frying pan to slightly cook that spinach. So dessert doesn't have to be a part of the meal. Once in a while, I mean, when I was younger, I would have a bowl of ice cream every night after dinner. When I'm talking younger, I was a teenager, and even up to about 5 years ago, I would still want some kind of dessert after my meal. Luckily for me, for my body, now I understand the damage much better that sugar creates inside the body. So that's the first item. The second item is snacking. Many people snack. I learned through Ayurveda medicine, as I read when I first started my yoga practice 22 years ago. Snacking is not recommended. If you do need to snack, try and make it something healthy that's loaded with fiber. For example, raw or partially cooked vegetables. Even fruit is okay, but fruit has a lot of sugar. If you're opening up a bag of potato chips or pretzels, that's a lot of sugar in your body, in your stomach. I'm losing a few pieces of spinach. And on an empty stomach, which sends your blood sugar level really high. So the body has to compensate for that extra blood sugar, and the compensation will usually result in deposits of fatty tissue. So snacking, and the reason why I learned is because the large intestine is about the thickness of your wrist. Obviously I don't know because I haven't opened up a human body to actually check it. I read it. So the large intestine is about the thickness of your wrist. So you can imagine as the food is moving along the tube of the large intestine, it's much easier to move when there's a full meal. I'm doing the motion as I imagine might happen with the large intestine, but obviously it's not going to be like this. It'll be different. If there's only a small quantity of food, for example a bag of potato chips, it's much harder for the large intestine to move that food along the tube. It has to constrict, it has to get a lot smaller in that action of moving the food along the tube. The suggestion for the raw or partially raw vegetables makes it a little easier because there's lots of fiber. Much easier to move the food through the intestine when there's lots of fiber. So that's the information I can share about snacking. So that's been 2 minutes, I think. I don't really have a good track of time while I'm speaking. Here are my 2 farm fresh eggs. I prefer to crack them in another container just to make sure. I mean, these were laid 24 hours ago, so they should be fine. That one's good. Goes in, and I'm just putting it in as you might put a poached egg in the boiling water. And egg number 2. It's good. So that'll go in somewhere else. And I'm going to use my awesome spatula I've spoken about numerous times. A very useful tool in the kitchen for many reasons. I won't repeat what I've said in the previous videos during this video. Maybe next video. So, to clean the raw egg, my uncle taught me that the best way to remove the smell is by using vinegar. So when I wash that, I will use vinegar to get rid of the smell and disinfect, and then use the dish washing soap. So that is my meal, and I turned off the heat because I don't want to cook so much that egg. It maintains its nutritional value if it's not cooked so much, and I'll be eating in about 10 or 15 minutes. So during that time the egg will partially cook. I'll repeat, with a farm factory egg I would want it to cook all the way through, and I would probably also turn it, spin it, mix it so that the egg breaks up and gets fully cooked. The final thing I want to mention that'll help for overall well-being and much easier digestion is when you're eating, it's much better not to have external distractions. It's much better to be able to focus on what you're doing at that moment, which is eating. And there are very few things more important than eating for overall health. The common distractions are watching the TV. I know, I mentioned earlier when I was a teenager, we used to watch TV every night. We had kind of a late dinner for North American standards. It was usually about 7 in the evening because that's when we would come home from our sport. We would finish at 6:30 and then get home by 7, and we'd have dinner at 7. At 7 o'clock was The Cosby Show. At 7:30 was Three's Company. every night we would watch those programs while we're eating our dinner. Another distraction is the phone, and another distraction similar to the phone is a personal computer, laptop. The main reason is because you're distracted. You're not focusing on what's happening at the moment, which is eating. And eating is really important for maintaining your human form in its most ideal health. If you're watching TV or you're on your phone, you're also not able to stay synchronized with your stomach and your brain. You're distracted. If you're able to focus on just the eating, you'll have a better signal of when you're full, when you've had enough food. Now, I mentioned yesterday or the day before in the video, you don't actually want the stomach to be full. You want to go to a maximum of about 70% capacity so that there's room for the food inside your stomach to kind of move around and get all the digestive enzymes. If you're distracted while you're eating, it's much more difficult to get the signal that you've had enough food. I also, when I eat, prefer not to talk. If I'm eating, someone wants to come and talk to me, I stop eating. I will usually cover my food with something to keep the warmth of the food inside the bowl, and I will talk to whoever wants to talk. And then when our conversation is finished, that's when I'll start eating. Because if you're talking and trying to eat, you're causing a lot of confusion into what's happening. So my suggestion is, when you're eating, try to have zero or minimal distraction so you can focus on the eating. So that's it for today. My meal is ready. A really easy way to prepare eggs, and it's a healthy meal. It's vegetables, lots of fiber, fair bit of sugar in the vegetables, but because there's lots of fiber, it will slow down the conversion into sugar. And then there's the 2 eggs. So my blood sugar level will be fine. The body wants to maintain an even level, and it will have an easy time with this one. So that's our video for today. Real easy, real quick. Please try it out. One thing I wanted to mention also, if you and your family want more than just vegetables and eggs, you could have this quantity for, say, 2 or 3 people, maybe 4 people. You would put 2 eggs per person, depending on the appetite level of each person. And then you could have a side dish of whatever you might normally choose. Very common in North America is potatoes, or sometimes rice, or sometimes pasta, sweet potato. But for me, I don't want that kind of side dish because they are kind of food that turns very quickly into sugar once it enters your stomach. So this will be great for me. It'll be fairly quick and easy to digest, meaning my body, I'll still feel light. I won't have the heaviness of all that extra food, because after my lunch I'm going to do some gardening, and I'll go for a little walk up to the upper part of the village, which includes walking up lots of stairs, which is a bit of exercise. And if the body doesn't have to work so hard digesting, the body has an easier time supplying blood to my legs and my body for that journey up the hill. So it's going to be a good lunch for me, and hopefully you can consider trying something like this. I'll show you maybe that the egg white is partially cooked, but the egg yolk is still runny. Can you see? Can you see it? There's a bit of liquid. What I'll do is I will add about a tablespoon of one of my superfoods in powdered form, and that'll absorb the water and increase the nutritional content of this meal. Thank you for watching. Eggs that are kind of poached, but not really poached in the normal sense.